Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to the broadcast. Tonight's show is the Christmas special. Tonight we will explore the history of Santa's favorite helper, Krampus. We will also dive into old Saint Nick's other helpers from around the world. The history behind the legend of Santa Claus is long and complicated. Historical evidence has shown that there was a Saint Nicholas alive during the 3rd century. His life became the base of what would become Santa Claus. Pagan practices were changed as Christianity expanded. Old pagan tales of gods and heroes delivering gifts were adapted to fit in with Christendom. This transition of pagan practices kept some aspect of their culture. Santa had always had a helper by his side. Europe has a very strong pagan history. Lots of folklore and myths had survived, but have been altered by Christianity. Europe's Santa Claus is Saint Nicholas. In every country he is portrayed somewhat differently. His history can be traced back to Odin. Odin had two ravens, Yule and Mune, who would spy for him. The ravens transformed into helpers. They would spy on the kids, and really, who had been nice and who had been naughty. Yes, Coca-Cola Claus does not put too much attention to it, but it can be seen in some lyrics. He knows if you've been bad or good, so be good for goodness sakes. In some countries the fertility aspect is focused on more. Christians did not like this aspect at all, but found it impossible to fully eradicate, so they turned the pagan god into a Christian saint. His helpers, sometimes portrayed as demonic, were placed submissive under this saint. Krampus, who is already pretty diffuse, and probably the most demonic portrayal of Saint Nicholas' helpers. Krampus is popular in Switzerland, parts of Germany, and Austria. His name stems from Thor, and he looks like a demon, or Satan. At Nicholas Eve on 5 December they make lots of noise with bells and horns. Parents give them Schmützbartel. They threaten to take bad children back to hell, and sometimes would slap young women on their behinds with birch twigs. They are often portrayed with horns on their head and long tongues. They are often played by young village men.
From northwest Germany is Belsnickel for Klaus. He delivers his presents without a Saint Nicholas. He is dressed completely in furs and sometimes dons a mask with a long tongue. Pelzen also mean to scold, to pelt, and he also carries a scolding rod made of twigs. Belsnickel is interesting because he embodies both the saint and his helpers in one. From Tyrol is the Klaubauf. He looks much like Krampus, a demon/Satan with goat horns, a red tongue out of his mouth. With his white sheep fur coat he looks a bit like a terrible demonic yeti. He carries chains to symbolize his submission to the Christian Saint Nicholas. He carries a bag or basket to take with him bad children. Children in Vinzgau try to wake him up on December 5th. In Carinthia, Austria, they call this monster the Schmützbartel genoemd. He is dressed in black sheep furs, has a horned mask with a red tongue hanging out. Sometimes he has a horse leg and walks with a limp. This helper is seen as very sexual. He loves to drink schnapps and gives extra attention to young girls. The helper of Sammy Klaus, the Swiss name for Santa Claus or Saint Nicholas, is called Schmützli. He is completely dressed in black and has a black painted face. Schmutz means dirt, denoting he is black due to dirt and muck. He carries a whip, chain and scolding rod, but also presents and candies in a bag. Good children received presents and candies, bad children were scolded or taken. Helper Ruprecht hails from the 17th century. He has a long dark beard, a scolding rod, a bag and a blackened face. He is dressed in fur and often has small horns on his head. He carries a basket on his back to transport naughty children. He said, "Ich bin der alte böse man, der alle Kinder fressen kann." I am the old angry man who can eat all the children. Naughty children he would take in his basket to consume them or throw them in the river. He is also called the Rucklaus, meaning something like rough claws. He carries a book with the names of the bad children with him. In Berchtesgaden, Germany. Buttnmandl, mostly because it looks kinda silly, and is clearly of pagan origin. During the St. Nicholas procession, a young man dressed entirely in twigs and hay walks along. He carries clocks that need to ring the entire time. Buttnmandl is celebrated in southern Germany. Alongside St. Nicholas walks a young female saint too. The sexual/fertility connotation is clear to me. In the Czech Republic they have the most blatant of helpers. He is simply called Cert, which means Satan/demon. To keep him in check he is usually accompanied by an angel. In Greece we have the Kallikantzaroi. They roam the earth between Christmas and Epiphany. They leave the underworld where they almost have cut down the Yggdrasil, generally translated as Odin's horse, an immense tree central in Norse cosmology. These are very mischievous creatures. They appear skinny, black with tails, claws and tusks, they have red eyes and a red tongue hanging out. And of course they have horns on their heads. When they enter a house they will create a big mess. They will steal food, pee in the water barrel, shit in the fireplace. On the holiday Epiphany they have to leave Earth and return to the underworld. But when they return to the tree, it is healed up again, and they have to start sawing all over again. Today, these creatures are only known in old lore. It is not certain if men ever dressed like them. Still, they show plenty of similarities with Krampus and other demonic helpers. In Iceland we see the Jolasveinar, Yule lads. Gnomish/dwarfish in appearance, they turn up one by one in the days before Christmas to act naughty. They used to instill a lot of fear. They paraded around dressed in animal skins, with horns and a tail. They threatened to take kids with them in a basket. Gryla is their mother. She is also looking for bad children to eat them. Gryla appears in the Norse Edda as a name for a giantess. In parts of France the saint is helped by an other acquainted saint. They call him le Père Fouettard, which, with difficulty, translates as the father who whips. He is often dressed in black, with a black beard, and carries a whip, basket, and chain. In the early Middle Ages he features in a macabre legend. 3 schoolboys were murdered and cut in pieces. The murderer had put them in a pickle barrel. Father Fouettard pretended he wanted some pickled meat from that very barrel and knocked it with his staff 3 times. The boys immediately jumped out alive. Since then Father Fouettard was allowed to accompany the saint to beat up naughty children with his whip.
Next, we have the Dutch Zwart Piet or Black Pete. Starting with a more demonic theme, in the late 18th century this helper got more black features, a black face, afro hair and red lips. To explain to children why Black Pete is black, parents say it is due to the chimney soot. Children would put their shoes near the fire and the black Petes would crawl through the chimney to fill them with parents. Saint Nicholas in Holland rides a white horse on the rooftops. Children often put a carrot in their shoes to feed it. Other countries have somewhat of a problem with Black Pete's portrayal. Dutch communities in New York use a white Pete, because in the US painting a white man black is strongly associated with blackfaces. Black Pete, however, has nothing to do with racism or slavery, though some children's songs relate blackness with negativity. Even though he is black as sooth, he really means it good. Black Pete carries a row, scolding stick made of twigs. Twigs used to be associated with fertility. He also carries a bag with presents and candy. If you have been bad, Black Pete will put you in the bag and take you back to Spain. This is commonly known as the place where St. Nicholas hails from. Much like in the US it is the North Pole, though it used to be Turkey. Black Pete is dressed in a 17th century clown costume thought to be of Moorish origin. These are upper-class court clothes made from fine expensive materials. Though Black Pete acts in a somewhat goofish manner, many children see him as more intelligent than Saint Nicholas himself. Children never get punished anymore, so Black Pete is seen as friendly.
The origins of the Holly King are little dubious, but there are links to the great kings of Ireland and the legend of the Holly King. With going too far into the history of Ireland, between 8000 to 7500 BCE the ice bridge between Scotland and Ireland collapses. Tribes of around 50,000 to 60,000 hunter-gatherers are now trapped in Ireland. The population dwindles to about 10,000 as animals and food run out, sustaining themselves in a variety of methods, including the consumption of mildly poisonous holly berries. Around 6,500 to 5,500 BCE the Quillian, holy men step onto the scene. Also known as the Shining Ones of Wicklow Hills, these men saved the dwindling population from barbarity and are the first priest kings to preach self-wisdom, organized religion for humanity and salvation. Through their efforts to save their people, some of these early priest kings sacrificed their lives in battle. From these early priest kings, the concept of the Holly King who saved his people from the depths of the winter ice is born. Through these early mythical legends, the Holly King begins his battle with his twin brother the Oak King at the summer solstice. As the year is waning, the Holly King prevails and begins preparations to save and maintain his people through the cold winter. In order to accomplish his mission, he travels the land to hunt, fish and harvest, transporting these life-saving items in a wagon or sled pulled by 8 deer. These gifts of life are provided to all his people, and in exchange they provide care and comfort to his team of deer.
In the German Schwaben and Switzerland you have multiple claws, saints, who parade around town. They call this Klausjagen. They are usually dressed in white with a black cap. Bells are tied to their cloths, and they carry strange masks made of tree bark. They make noise with cowbells, snapping whips and blowing horns. One thing that I noticed is that, though the helpers are demonic and fearful, they are also exciting. The fear they induce is almost appealing and triggers some very old archetypes, especially for children. The helpers appear satyr-like. They do things we, as children, don't dare doing.
With the exception of Krampus, the helpers have been turned into cute and endearing creatures for the children, and were rid of their morality-driven monster-like features and cruel punishment. If this is a good thing for the children, one can debate. I think a little horror never hurt anyone. Imagine being a child in ancient times and celebrating an event where evil demonic creatures roamed around freely, in a time where belief in those creatures as real was very much alive. I think it built character. Some children are traumatized by the modern portrayal of Santa Claus too.
With internet's broadcast with an encounter and with Krampus.
Be 10-year-old boy visiting grandparents in Frankfurt, Germany. Be somewhat spoiled as my upper middle class parents didn't believe in spanking. Act like a mischievous little shit, pushing cat off the counter, hiding the remote just for fun, etc., etc. One day my parents are out to dinner and both my grandparents are downstairs getting ready to eat some supper. Alone in room, playing with my army men when I hear something clawing at inside of my closet. Think it's my grandparents' retarded cat who's slowly going blind from old age. It got stuck in the weirdest places, don't ask. Go to open the door. Holy fuck, there's a man in my closet. Holy fuck, he looks deformed and has goat horns. Holy fuck's everywhere. Try to scream but Krampus pulls me in closet. Holds my head to his chest, with one hand, muffling my screams. Starts to beat me over the back with a bundle of birch sticks. Birch sticks hurt like a bitch, FYI. Freaking out and shitting myself, hear Krampus making some kind of weird high-pitched goat sound in my ear, then telling me I've been the bad boy in Old German. Finally lets me go. Run downstairs with piss all over me, and a load in my pants. Grandparents call cops and Grandpa runs upstairs with golf club. Cops show up and search the house. Find nothing, no sign of breaking and entering. Tell grandparents what I saw. They look scared and never talk about it again.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.